Amnesty International has attacked the Labour Party's immigration policy. A senior human rights activist has accused Whitehall of reheating old messaging after the Home Secretary announced a crackdown on organised immigration crime. Steve Valdez Simmons, Amnesty International's Refugee and Migrant Rights Programme director, described Yvette Cooper's new package as dismaying and warned a securitist approach could put off genuine asylum seekers from crossing borders if they needed to. Now, this is after Yvette Cooper announced a big crackdown on immigration and small boat crossings. Yvette Cooper has launched a major immigration crackdown and soaring numbers of asylum seekers crossing the English Channel in small boats. The Home Secretary said, "We are taking strong and clear steps to boost our border security and ensure the rules are respected and enforced. Our new Border Security Command is already gearing up, with new staff being urgently recruited and additional staff already stationed across Europe. The number of immigration detention spaces will also be increased as the government aims to speed up the removal of those whose asylum claims are rejected." So, Kevin, look, we were told that Labour had to take certain positions in order to get elected. Well, they're in government, so it's clear this is not an electoral strategy. They really believe this, don't they?
Yeah, as with the previous topic, and as indeed with topics we'll cover later, there is no real difference between them and the Tory party. This, and I think Amnesty International was right in its criticisms and actually couched them in relatively political terms rather than being as strident as they might otherwise have been. And I get that. They're a diplomatic organisation which has to work across borders. They have to treat things with a certain amount of kid gloves, and I get that. But I think they're absolutely correct in their criticisms, nonetheless. That when they got rid of the Rwanda scheme and the Bibi Stockholm, both of which were absolute stains on Britain internationally and internally, I and a lot of other people, I think probably yourself, were very, very happy with that. That was a good thing. That was a positive change. And when the Labour Party does something good, it's worth saying so. It's not, it's not a this team good, that team bad situation. When they got rid of them, that was good. But I couched that in terms of why they did it. They did it because it was financially inefficient as a method. A method of what exactly? A method of still being unbelievably cruel towards migrants. We know that the real thing to do if we wanted to actually save lives and live up to our international law obligations would be to open safe and legal routes so that they didn't come by small boats, they came by big, normal, actual boats or planes or the Channel Tunnel or whatever. And we won't do that because the Labour Party are as bad, it seems, on immigration as the Tory party are. And the thing that's so sickening about all of this is that not 2 weeks ago, there were race riots in Britain. There were essentially violent attempted pogroms against migrants. We had attempted murder on a mass scale being perpetrated, fires being set inside hotels that people couldn't escape from. And the Labour Party, the Labour government, had an opportunity to stand up against that kind of racist filth, and instead has taken the opportunity to pander to them and to cave in to them. It's embarrassing, it's shambolic, and they should be damned ashamed of themselves.
Now, the centrists have always somehow believed that, well, if you capitulate on such issues, it's a way to deter more right-wing forces. Well, it doesn't seem like they're being deterred. I mean, what do you think the consequences will be of Labour continuing on this path? It's not the right-wing government, isn't it? It's the so-called progressive government. I mean, instead of taking on the right-wing framing of immigration, they're continuing this path essentially. So, what's the implication here, you think?
It's the emboldening further of the far right. There can be no other outcome. We've seen from Nigel Farage already that he's putting forward the idea that he is the reason that this is taking place. Increased support for him means you push the Overton window and the zeitgeist of political movement further and further to the right on the matter of immigration. They're literally now calling for, within the Reform Party, a national referendum on net zero migration, which is an absurd concept which doesn't work and wouldn't live up to literally the pre-existing international law obligations that we have, as well as just basic humanity, that if people are asylum seekers, you take them in. That's the idea anyway. So, yeah, it would just be the further emboldening of the far right by moving the national conversation further and further and further. And we're seeing it. It's not just the government, it's the political establishment in totality, who, like I say, 2 weeks ago were quite rightly being blamed for stoking the fires of racial hatred in this country. And they've all gone back to doing exactly the same, because now it's fine. Now some people are being thrown in jail for stealing pasties from Greggs. All of a sudden, the problem is fine again. We literally have seen over the weekend major news outlets screaming and shouting about the fact that 400 migrants came over in boats on Saturday, wherever it was. Which, if you actually look at the number of people who emigrated from the country on average last year, more than 600 would have left. So actually, we're 200 down if the numbers are to be believed, which, again, who even knows at this point if any of it's real? But they've gone back to stoking the same hatred and division because it sells. It's good content. They get clicks, they get newspaper sales, they get right-wing outrage, and it stokes the fires yet and yet and yet again. And unfortunately, whilst the rioters themselves have been quite rightly put in jail, the people behind it all, the likes of Nigel Farage, the likes of Dacre at the Daily Mail and various other people, they will face no consequences for this. And yet they are the people who perpetrated it.
Now, I mean, despite Labour winning a big majority, and obviously, I would say client journalists or the centrist pundits, they use that as evidence of what having, political nous. They think that's what political intelligence is. I think you and I would agree. I think a lot of circumstances are at play in terms of elections. Obviously, the Conservative collapsing, which for me, that's the number one reason why Labour won.
Oh, yeah.
But I think that, I mean, look, you've got James Cleverly attacking Labour on this policy. And this is the thing which either figures in the Labour Party know and they ignore, or they don't know and they don't realise, is that it doesn't matter how right-wing you become or try and capitulate. There will be a party to your right that will criticise you anyway, because they understand politics, right? The Tory party, I know they lost an election, right? But they do understand politics in terms of the narrative, because they know we'll never be happy with immigration policy. We'll always try and push it further to the right. So every single time the so-called Progressive Party does capitulate, you won't have the Tories say, oh, that's actually really good. Thank you. That's what we wanted. No, they're going to try and go even more right-wing. And you enable that, don't you? Because you're actively pushing the Overton window to the right. Now, in terms of Yvette Cooper's sort of migrant clampdown, which is essentially mostly refugees and people on boats, this is separate than, the levels of immigration that people talk about. I mean, Labour hasn't talked about safe routes, right? They want to go after criminal gangs, fine, but that's not addressing the root problem. They want to increase detention centres, which are frankly horrible. A whole lot of abuse happens in these places. So this isn't even about lowering the so-called economic migrants. This is going after the most vulnerable, which wouldn't make a dent in the overall number of immigration. You've just pointed out there, if the numbers are to be believed, 400 migrants or refugees coming to this country, but there were 600 people who left. So why aren't they, again, I disagree with stronger restrictions on immigration, but I also accept that the majority in this country support that. Why aren't Labour talking more about levels of immigration or going after levels of economic migrants? Why are they going after refugees? I mean, it's absolutely poisonous when it comes to the political debate. Can you demonstrate to me how this is any different to the Tories, especially Rishi Sunak?
Well, I can't demonstrate that to you because it isn't. Fundamentally, Yvette Cooper is now doing a Priti Patel tribute act.
Yeah.
They're basically stealing the Tories' clothes because they're just the Tory party now. I was literally having a discussion on my stream last night about the Tory party leadership election and how frankly boring it was. And someone pointed out, and it's so true, there is a fantastic array of great Tory party leadership contests, old school Tory leadership contest candidates on the front bench of the Labour Party. They're literally just the old school Tory party from like the mid-2000s. That's what they are now. They're Michael Howard, they're Ian Duncan Smith, they're whoever. Those people are now running the Labour Party. And that's why they're doing this, because they don't fundamentally disagree, it seems. And it offers no substantive difference. The people looked from the pigs to the humans and the humans to the pigs, and they couldn't tell the difference anymore. It literally is. It's Animal Farm.
Patreon.com, Turn Left Media. Support independent media. Support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you, Turn Left.